In these next couple of videos, we are going to be talking about multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. So we're actually going to start with multiplying here. Before the video gets started, make sure that you have this note sheet. Go ahead and pick that up. We're going to be filling that out together, as well as doing an extra practice problem together as well. So let's go ahead and move on. We're going to start with, on this note sheet on the back side, the top left-hand corner, with just multiplying fractions. So if we focus on the top left-hand corner, the notes give you a big blank in the beginning, and it's blank, get common denominators. Here we do not get common denominators. And that goes for both multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. We do not want to get a common denominator here. So we're actually going to leave this problem the way it is. And we want to look to see first if we can cross cancel, if possible. So that's kind of like an early step of simplifying. Once we see if we can do any cross canceling, we want to multiply the numerator by the numerator and also multiply denominator by denominator. So basically we're just multiplying straight across if we can't do any cross canceling. And our very last step, which is going to be the last step for everything, is going to be to simplify if possible. Now, if you have already cross canceled as much as you possibly could, you should not have to simplify at the end. If you end up having to simplify at the end, that just means you didn't fully cross cancel, which is not a big deal. Either way, you actually end up getting the same answer. So we're going to go ahead and start with our example problem, 3/4 multiplied by 6/15. So we need to look at our diagonal numbers. So I'm going to look at 3 and 15 first. And I'm circling those because they have a common factor. Both 3 and 15 can be divided by 3. So I'm going to cross cancel by dividing both of those numbers by 3. So 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. Then I'm going to look at my other set of diagonals, 6 and 4. They also have a common factor. Here, the common factor of 6 and 4 is 2. So we're going to divide 6 by 2. So 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. I've done my cross canceling. There's actually no other cross canceling I can do here. So now I multiply across. Numerator times numerator, which gives me 3. Denominator times denominator, which is 10. So my answer is 3/10. Now there is another problem I want to do with just multiplying fractions. So hopefully there's a little bit of room underneath this example problem. If there's not, go ahead and use your notebook and do the practice problem in your notebook. So the next step, or the next problem, here says multiply the following fractions, 3/14 multiplied by 7/12. So our first step is to not get common denominators. So we're not getting common denominators. Then we want to see if we can cross cancel. So again, I'm going to look at my diagonal numbers. Here I see 7 and 14. Both of those can be divided by 7. 7 divided by 7 gives me 1. 14 divided by 7 gives me 2. Then I'm going to look at my other set of diagonals, 3 and 12. And they also have a common factor of 3. So 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 12 divided by 3 gives me 4. Now, before we go on, I do want to point out that you don't always have to be able to cross cancel both sets of diagonals. Sometimes it's only one set. Sometimes you actually can't cross cancel at all. So keep those in mind as well. These two examples just happen to be able to cross cancel both sets of diagonals, but that's not always the case. So from here, we're going to multiply straight across, numerator times numerator, which gives us 1, denominator times denominator, so 2 times 4 gives me 8. So our final answer is 1/8. Now we're actually going to stay on that multiplication idea, except now we're going to be multiplying mixed numbers. So it's the bottom left-hand side of your note sheet that looks like this here. And we're going to start with filling out this note sheet. So again, it starts with that blank, which should say, do not get common denominators. Again, we don't want those common denominators with multiplying or dividing. Then our next step, very important, is to change them into improper fractions. So that's our C method. So we'll see that again in our example problems. We want to cross cancel. If possible, then this pretty much looks like our steps for multiplying just regular fractions. We want to multiply the numerator by the numerator and also multiply denominator by denominator. And then again, that last step, if possible, we want to simplify. So our example here is 2 4/5 multiplied by 3 4/7. So we need to turn these into improper fractions first using our C method. So we multiply denominator times whole number plus numerator. So 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 is 14. The denominator stays the same. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 4 is 25. And keep our denominator the same. So then we're going to look to see if we can cross cancel. Here again, there's some cross canceling. 5 and 25 have a common factor of 5. So 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. 25 divided by 5 gives me 5. And my second set of diagonals, 14 and 7, have a common factor of 7. 7 divided by 7 gives me 1. 14 divided by 7 gives me 2. Since we have finished cross canceling, we're going to multiply straight across. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 1 is 1. Or we can just write this as 10. So 10 over 1 or 10. We usually don't see whole numbers written over 1 as our final answer. So 10 is going to be that most common. But either way, you still have that same value. Again, hopefully there's some room underneath your example problem. Again, if not, go ahead and do this next one in your notebook. So our next problem says multiply the following mixed numbers. We have 4 1/2 multiplied by 2 9/10. So we need to turn these into improper fractions first using our C method. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1 is 9, so it's 9/2 multiplied by 10 times 2 is 20 plus 9 is 29, so 29 over 10. Our next step here, see if we can do any cross canceling. When I look at my diagonals, there actually is no cross canceling. So here's an example of not being able to do any cross canceling at all. So then we move on to multiply numerator by numerator and denominator by denominator. So 9 multiplied by 29 gives us 261. Our denominator, 2 times 10, is 20. So here this is an improper fraction. So we want to make sure that we simplify this as much as possible. So even though there wasn't any cross canceling, we can rewrite this as a mixed number. So 20 can go into 261 13 times. I'm going to move this down here. And that is 260. Then we have 1 left over, and we keep our denominator the same. So this mixed number is actually 13 and 1/20. So that concludes our video for multiplying fractions and mixed numbers. Hopefully you've got all of those notes taken down, the example problems written on the note sheet or in your notebook. And then go ahead on to the second video, which is dividing fractions and mixed numbers.